Hi, I'm Patti. I'm a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain Gems and Beads, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make these gorgeous red agate earrings. You can see here that they are made of red agate, sterling silver, and some copper accents with these great little tassels. Okay, so to start off this project, I am going to pull in one of these great little pre-made mini tassels and some of this 18 gauge half-hard sterling silver wire. So I'm going to pull off probably about 5 inches of this wire and snip that. Set that aside. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make the little dangle on the earring. You can see here that it's made of one of these great little firecrackle agates. These really cute little sterling barrels with little stars in them and the tassel. So I've got my wire and my tassel. I'm going to go ahead and remove the jump ring that's in the tassel. That's going to get in my way. It won't fit in this cute little barrel until I remove that. So I'm actually going to replace that with the wire to make a dangle. So I'm going to use my flush cutter and I'm just going to snip that jump ring and carefully pull it out. Now I'm going to use the same hole that the jump ring is currently in to thread my wire through, so I want to be careful not to displace those threads too much. Okay, now I'll take my wire and put it right back through gently where the jump ring was, correcting anything that needs to be corrected there and making sure it gets through every single little loop. There we go. Now I can see that one little thread didn't quite make it through. To prevent issues later, I'm going to go ahead and just pull that one off. So I'll grab my chain nose pliers and just take that one little thread off. That's fine. Okay, now just a couple of inches up on the tail on one side, and we'll leave the long tail here. I'm going to cross the wire nice and tight right up against the tassel. Just like that. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers with the long tail and I'm going to kick it straight up from the tassel. Just like that. Then I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to anchor that wire. And it's pretty stiff. 18 gauge is pretty stiff, so you just want to go slowly and carefully. And I'm just going to make one wrap all the way around. This is going to be hidden, so it doesn't need to be perfect looking. Okay, so I've got my full revolution there. I'll go ahead and snip off the tail. Okay. Then I'm just going to kind of straighten this wire out a little bit with my thumb and forefinger. That's good. And then I'm going to take my little barrel and put that right over, make sure it all fits in there neatly. And if you've made it tight enough, it'll just slip right over there. Now before I pull it all the way onto the tassel, I'm just kind of measuring it right now to make sure it's going to fit. I'm going to pull that back off. And I'm going to use a little DovCon 5-minute epoxy. And we're going to add a little glue to the inside of the barrel, the epoxy to the inside of the barrel, to make sure it stays in place. So to use DevCon 5-minute epoxy, it has 2 sides, as you can see here. I'm going to squeeze out just a little bit on either side here. Use one plunger to squeeze both. Doesn't take much. And then I'm going to pull the plunger back just a little bit to make sure that it doesn't leak. That sucks the epoxy back up in. You set that aside. And then I'll use a toothpick to mix those together really well. Okay. Then you just want to grab a little bit of the epoxy, and right at about the center of the barrel, just take that toothpick and apply some epoxy. I'm going to get just a little bit more. Okay, you don't want it splashing out through the stars, but you want enough in there so when I slide it on, it's going to hold in place on the tassel. So I'm just going to slide that down onto the tassel, and I want it so the wraps of the tassel are just covered, and the wrap that we made before is below the line of this little barrel. Okay, so in about 5 or 10 minutes, that'll be completely dry, and then you can keep working with it. So I'm going to set that aside, and I happen to have one that I already did that's nice and dry and ready to go. So the next thing I'll do, as you can see, there's this little fire crackle bead. I'll grab one of those and just we'll thread that on. And I'm just going to kind of position that right at the top there. And then I'll take my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to make a wire wrap loop right at the top of that bead. Just a bit down the pliers. We don't need it very long there. So just a bit past the tip here, I'm going to push the wire to a 90-degree angle, like that. And I'm going to take my round nose pliers, just at the tip. We don't need too big of a loop there. I'm going to push the wire all the way around, pull the top barrel out, put the bottom barrel in the loop, and then keep going around till I've gone to a 90-degree angle again. So you end up with what looks like a little lollipop on a stick there. Then I'm going to put my chain nose pliers in my non-dominant hand, and I'm going to clamp that loop nice and firmly using lots of pressure on this hand. And then I'll take another pliers. I'll use my rounds. You could use a flat or a chain nose. And right close to the loop, I'm going to wrap until the bead is nice and secure against the barrel. It feels good. I'm going to go ahead and snip off the tail with my flush cutters using the smooth side of the flush cutter against the piece I'm keeping. And then I'll take my chain nose pliers and just tuck in that tail. I'm going to go around in a little circle. And there we have the dangle for the bottom. We'll add some little copper accents all at the same time toward the end there. So just go ahead and set that aside. Next, we're going to make this overwrap red agate bead. So let's grab one of those. So red agate is a gorgeous stone. A lot of people who love red agate enjoy it because they feel like it has properties that are grounding. It reduces negativity, and it also helps promote creativity, which is perfect for a project like this. Okay, let's grab some more of the sterling silver wire. I'm going to grab about 8 inches off of there. Snip that. Okay, so to wrap this bead, we're creating a loop at the bottom and going through, creating another loop, overwrapping and wrapping again. So to wrap this red agate bead, we're going to use about 8 inches of 18 gauge sterling silver wire. I'm going to go ahead and snip that off. It's better to cut a little too much than not have enough. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is make this bottom loop here on the overwrapped bead. So we'll use the round nose pliers and just make a small loop, leaving about 1 inch or so of tail, just like that. Now I'm going to open that loop up with my chain nose pliers just a little bit and thread on my little tassel bead. Close that back up, and then I'm going to use this long tail and kind of kick that up so it's centered on the loop, kind of like a lollipop on a stick, and then we've got the tail coming out. I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers, and in my non-dominant hand I'm going to clamp that loop nice and tight, and we'll just let that little tassel bead hang in the center. That's fine. Okay, then I'll use another pair of pliers and just make a couple of wraps right up against the loop. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and snip off that tail. And then I'll use my chain nose pliers to just snug in the tail, kind of go around in a little circle. Okay, so there we have the bottom. I'm just going to use my thumb and forefinger to straighten that wire just a little bit. Kind of using my thumb and pushing against the wire to create an opposite arc to what's already kind of there. And that straightens it out. Okay, let's go ahead and thread on the red agate bead. So now we've got the bead on the wire. Next, we're going to take one of these cute little stardust saucers and add that as a little embellishment at the top there. Then we're going to measure the space that we need to leave to wrap. So we're going to need to make a loop, wrap above the beads, come around the bead and wrap below the beads, so we need to leave a little extra space. If I were just doing a couple of wraps, I would use the tip of my pliers about like that to measure how much space to leave. But since we need wraps at the bottom, I'm going to move the barrel up a bit, about there, and leave that much space. So right now I'm going to push the wire against the pliers, making a 90-degree angle. Then I'm going to use about the middle of the barrel of the round nose pliers to make a bit larger loop. So I'm going to push that all the way around, take out the top barrel, put in the bottom barrel, keep going around until I have about a 90-degree space there left. Then I'm going to flip this around and use some pliers to clamp that loop. And we'll use another pair of pliers to wrap. Now you want to be really careful to leave this really nice. We don't want to bend or mangle that. So I'm going to hold it kind of toward the end here with my flat nose or my chain nose pliers. And I'm going to make some wraps. I'll make several wraps here. Really nice and tight against that loop. Okay, now I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to push the beads right up against the wraps and kind of hold it tightly, leaving a little space here between the bead and the bottom wrap. Then I'm going to take my wire and kind of spiral it around and make another wrap here at the bottom. Cut that off with my flush cutters. And I'm holding onto that wire so it doesn't fly up into my face. That's important. And then I'll snug in that tail a bit with my chain nose pliers. Okay. All right, that's coming along really, really nicely. I'm just adjusting it a bit with my fingers. That looks great. So the next thing we're going to do is add these little copper accents. So I'm going to take some of this copper rabbit wire, this 24 gauge, And I don't need too much. Just gonna cut off a little section here. And this is just decorative wrap. So right above my little saucer bead here, I'm gonna kind of anchor that copper wire. And then I'm just gonna wrap over the silver wraps. And I'm gonna try and kind of encompass them with the copper. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's actually kind of nice if it's a little bit messy. It's got that kind of a messy look. Once I feel like that's good, I'm just going to take my flush cutters and cut off those tails, making sure that it's kind of ending in a place where I want it to end. And then take my chain nose pliers and tuck that in on both ends. Okay. Then we'll do that just the same for the other two sections below the bead and at the top of the little dangle. Okay. So we're making great progress on the earring. The last thing to do is just to make sure everything feels aligned. Whenever you're doing wire work, you can kind of adjust things with your fingers. That all looks really good. And then take our little round French hook here, open that up sideways, add the earring on. Just make sure that you're orienting the wrap toward the front. Close that up with my chain nose pliers and kind of rock the tip back and forth to make sure there's a tight connection. And there you have your gorgeous red agate earring. Thank you so much for being with us here today for this project. We have a whole list of start to finish projects in our gallery, so make sure and check those out on our website. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.